Whatever you are about to do next, stop. Put down a mental list of everything you have to handle today. Step away, just for a moment, from the noise of the algorithm pulling you in 17 different directions. Close, even just halfway, the part of your mind that is already preparing to scroll past this video and keep searching for the next thing. Because what I am about to share with you is not the next thing. It is the thing. The one simple practice, the one quiet shift, the one ancient and almost forgotten act that the moment you actually do it, will reorganize the entire structure of your life from the inside out. I am not selling you a course or a supplement or a manifestation technique that requires you to repeat affirmations into a mirror for 90 days before you see results. I am telling you something that Carl Jung, the most profound depth psychologist who ever lived, spent his entire career circling around. Something the deepest mystical traditions of every culture have encoded into their most serious teachings. Something that every human being who has ever undergone a genuine transformation eventually discovers, usually too late, after years of trying everything else first. The thing that changes your life is not complicated, it is simple. So simple that your mind will almost certainly resist it. So simple that the part of you addicted to complexity and struggle will try to convince you that something this small could not possibly produce the transformation you have been searching for. But it does. It always has. And by the end of this video, if you stay with me, if you let what I am about to share actually land, rather than skating across the surface of your attention, you will have something in your hands that most people search their entire lives for and never find. A practice that works immediately, without permission from anyone, without the right circumstances, without waiting for Monday or January or the next chapter of your life that you keep promising yourself is coming. Right now, tonight, the moment you finish watching this video, let us begin. Before I tell you what the practice is, I need to lay the foundation. Because if you receive the practice without first understanding why it works, you will dismiss it the way most people dismiss every truly transformative thing they ever encounter. You will think it is too small. You will think it cannot possibly do what I'm claiming it does. You will go back to looking for something more complicated, more impressive, more aligned with your existing belief that transformation requires great effort and great difficulty and great sophistication. And you will miss the very thing that would have changed your life. So let me show you why this works first. Carl Jung discovered something about the human psyche that most people never come to understand. He discovered that the conscious mind, the small voice you call I, is only a tiny fraction of who you actually are. Beneath your conscious awareness lies a vast reservoir that Jung called the unconscious. And within that unconscious lives almost everything that actually shapes your life. Your repressed memories, your inherited patterns, your buried emotions, your unmet childhood needs, your forgotten dreams, your rejected aspects of self, your archetypal connections to the deeper layers of human experience, all of it, operating beneath your awareness, driving your choices, attracting your circumstances, shaping your relationships, determining the outcomes of your life with a precision and consistency that the conscious mind cannot match. Jung said something that I want you to sit with for a moment. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Read that again. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is why most people's lives never actually change. Not really. They change the surface arrangements. The job, the city, the partner, the wardrobe, the morning routine, the supplements, the productivity system. But underneath, the same patterns keep repeating, the same outcomes keep arriving, the same emotional weather keeps recurring, because the unconscious has not changed. And the unconscious is the actual operating system of the life. The simple practice I'm going to share with you works because it does the one thing that almost no one else is doing. It opens the deliberate, conscious channel between your awareness and your unconscious. It begins the work of integration that Jung spent his life describing as individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. And here's what almost no one understands. You do not need to do this work for years before you begin to see results. The moment you begin the practice, the moment you actually open the channel, something starts to shift. Not slowly, not eventually, immediately. Because the unconscious has been waiting. It has been waiting your entire life for the conscious mind to finally turn toward it with attention rather than away from it with fear or distraction. The instant you turn toward it, it responds. This is not metaphor. This is the actual mechanism of psychological transformation. Now I'm going to tell you what the practice is. It is one thing, one simple, ancient, almost embarrassingly small act that you can begin tonight in less than 10 minutes in any room of any house, in any city, in any condition of life. The practice is this. You sit in silence with no input, with no phone, with no music, with no book, with no agenda, and you write. That is it. You write whatever arises in your mind, without editing, without judging, without trying to make sense of it, without trying to be impressive or profound or coherent. You let the contents of your unconscious begin to flow up into your conscious awareness through the simple act of putting words on a page that no one else will ever read. That is the practice. I know what your mind just did. I know the resistance that just rose up. I know the disappointment, the dismissal, the immediate temptation to leave this video and keep searching for something more impressive. Stay with me, because what looks small is not small. What looks ordinary is not ordinary. And what your mind is doing right now, the resistance to a practice this simple, is itself the first piece of evidence that this practice is exactly what your unconscious has been protecting itself against for years. Let me explain why this works. When you sit in silence and write without an agenda, you bypass the most sophisticated defense system that your psyche has ever constructed. The conscious mind, the part of you that thinks it is in charge, is constantly performing, constantly editing, constantly arranging the content of your inner experience into shapes that feel acceptable to share with yourself, with others, with the world. This performance happens beneath your awareness. You do not notice you are doing it. You think the polished, organized, presentable version of your inner experience is just how your inner experience naturally is. It is not. Beneath the performance, the actual contents of your psyche are vastly different. Wilder, stranger, more contradictory, more tender, more frightened, more angry, more grieving, more longing, more alive. But you have been trained since the earliest moments of your childhood to keep the actual contents below the surface and only show the curated version, to yourself most of all. The practice of writing in silence, without an agenda, without an audience, without any goal other than letting whatever wants to come actually come, slowly dissolves the performance. The first day you do it, the writing will be empty, polished, performative. The mind will offer you the same surface level thoughts it always offers. But if you keep showing up, if you keep sitting, if you keep writing without trying to control what arises, something begins to shift. The unconscious begins to trust that you are actually listening. And once it trusts, it speaks. It tells you things you did not know you knew. It reveals patterns you had not noticed. It surfaces memories that explain choices you have been confused about for years. It expresses emotions that you have been carrying without language for so long they had become invisible. And in the act of being given language, those contents begin to integrate. They move from the unconscious, where they were running your life, invisibly, into consciousness, where you can finally see them, work with them, decide what to do with them. This is the entire mechanism of psychological transformation. This is what every form of therapy, every spiritual practice, every wisdom tradition has been pointing toward in different languages for thousands of years. Make the unconscious conscious. And the moment you begin to do this, even for 10 minutes a day, even in the simplest, most unimpressive form imaginable, your life begins to change. Not because the outer circumstances have changed yet, because the operating system underneath the circumstances has begun to shift. And from that shift, every outer change eventually flows. Right now, if something in this video is reaching the place inside you that has been waiting for a practice that actually works, type 777 in the comments below. The frequency of a soul that is ready to stop searching for the next complicated answer and finally do the simple work that produces real transformation. The signal that you're awake to what your unconscious has been waiting your entire life to receive from you. Type it now, not as performance, as a quiet declaration that tonight, before you sleep, you will sit in silence and write for 10 minutes. As a vow to yourself that you will give this practice the chance you have been refusing to give it. The field always responds to those who declare themselves with seriousness. Now I want to walk you through exactly how to do this practice, because the simplicity is deceiving. There are subtleties that determine whether the practice transforms your life or whether it becomes another thing you tried for 3 days and abandoned. The first subtlety is the environment. You need to be alone. Truly alone, not alone with the television in the background, not alone with notifications enabled, not alone with someone in the next room who might walk in. Genuine solitude. The unconscious will not surface if it senses that the conscious mind has divided attention. It will wait until the conditions are right. Find a place, a specific place, the same place every night if possible. A chair by a window, a corner of your bedroom, a quiet spot at a desk. The body remembers locations. The act of sitting in the same place every night begins to train the psyche that this is the time and the place where the inner channel opens. The second subtlety is the absence of input. No music, no background sound except whatever ambient sound exists naturally in the room. No phone. The phone should not be in the room with you, or if it must be, it should be in another part of the room, face down, completely silent. Why this matters? The unconscious surfaces in the spaces between thoughts. If those spaces are constantly being filled with external input, even pleasant input, even meditative music, the unconscious cannot get through. You need silence, not because silence is morally superior, because silence is the only environment in which the deeper layers of your psyche have any space to speak. The third subtlety is the writing itself, by hand, not on the phone, not on a laptop, by hand, with a pen, in a notebook that no one else will ever read. Why this matters? The act of handwriting engages the body. It slows the mind. It creates a physical relationship with the words that typing simply cannot replicate. The unconscious responds to embodied attention. It does not respond to the same kind of attention you give to your screens all day. A simple notebook, a simple pen, nothing fancy, nothing performative. just the materials of a practice that is meant to be private and real rather than impressive. The fourth subtlety is the absence of agenda. You're not writing to solve a problem. You're not writing to plan your day. You're not writing to journal in a way that productivity culture has taught you to journal, with prompts and structures and goals and gratitude lists. You're writing whatever arises. If what arises is nothing, you write nothing. If what arises is the same sentence over and over, you write the same sentence over and over. If what arises is a memory from when you were 6 years old that you have not thought about in decades, you write the memory. If what arises is rage at someone you have been polite about for years, you write the rage. If what arises is grief you did not know was still there, you write the grief. You let the unconscious choose the content. This is the most counterintuitive and most important subtlety of all. The conscious mind wants to manage the practice. The conscious mind wants to decide what is appropriate to write, what is worth writing, what is productive to focus on. The conscious mind must step back. The practice is the conscious mind sitting quietly with the pen in its hand and saying to the unconscious, I am listening. Whatever you want to say, I will write it down. I will not edit. I will not judge. I will not interrupt. I am here. I am ready. Speak. And then you let it speak. The fifth subtlety is the duration. 10 minutes minimum, 15 if you can manage it, 20 if the practice deepens. But here's the secret that almost no one teaches. The first 5 minutes are warm-up. The conscious mind is still performing. The writing during those minutes is usually surface level, polished, expected. Something shifts around the 7 or 8 minute mark. The performance tires. The conscious mind grows bored of its own polished offerings. The unconscious senses the opening and begins to push through. If you stop at 5 minutes, you miss the entire practice. The transformation happens in the minutes after the conscious mind has exhausted its prepared material and the deeper voice begins to emerge. Stay for those minutes. That is where your life begins to change. The sixth subtlety is what you do with what you have written. Almost nothing. You do not analyze it. You do not try to interpret it. You do not turn it into a self-improvement project. You simply close the notebook and sit for a moment in silence. The integration happens beneath consciousness, not above it. The act of writing has already done the work. The contents that surfaced have already begun the journey from unconscious to conscious. Trying to immediately analyze them only re-engages the performing mind and short-circuits the integration. Trust the process. Close the notebook, sit in the silence for 1 more minute, and then return to your life. If you do this practice in this exact way every night for 30 days, I promise you something will change. Not slowly, not subtly, significantly. Let me tell you what to expect. In the first week, you will feel restless, bored, resistant. The practice will feel small and unimpressive. You will doubt that anything is happening. You will be tempted to add complications, to look up better journaling techniques, to abandon the practice for something more sophisticated. Stay. This restlessness is the conscious mind defending its dominance. It is the part of you that has been in charge for so long that it cannot tolerate 10 minutes of quiet attention to something deeper. The restlessness is the resistance, and the resistance is itself the proof that you're doing something significant. In the second week, you will begin to notice things. You will start dreaming more vividly. You will catch yourself remembering things you had not thought about in years. You will feel emotions arising in unexpected moments throughout the day. Small synchronicities will start appearing. Do not get attached to these signs. They are simply the unconscious announcing that the channel is open. Acknowledge them and continue the practice. In the third week, the practice will begin to deepen. You will start to look forward to the 10 minutes rather than dreading them. The writing will become richer, stranger, more revelatory. You will begin to encounter material that surprises you, that teaches you, that explains things about your life you had been confused about. In the fourth week, your outer life will begin to shift, not always dramatically, sometimes subtly. You will find yourself making different choices, speaking up where you used to stay silent, setting boundaries you have been unable to set, walking away from situations you have been unable to leave, reaching toward possibilities you have been unable to acknowledge. This is the unconscious, now in conscious dialogue with the rest of your life, beginning to reorganize the outer arrangements to match the deeper truth that has been surfacing through the practice. This is how lives actually change. Not through massive disruption, not through complicated programs, not through expensive coaching or radical lifestyle redesign, through 10 minutes a night, with a pen in your hand, sitting alone in silence, listening to what has been waiting your entire life to be heard. Now I want to address the part of you that is still resisting, the part that thinks this is too simple, the part that thinks the real answer must be more complicated, more impressive, more aligned with the cultural mythology of transformation that you've absorbed from every self-help book and every productivity guru and every wellness influencer you have ever encountered. That part of you is the same part that has kept you searching for years without finding what you are looking for. It is the part that prefers complexity, because complexity allows it to remain in charge. The conscious mind loves complicated practices because complicated practices keep the conscious mind busy and important and necessary. A simple practice threatens the conscious mind. A simple practice that opens the channel to the unconscious threatens the entire dominance of the performing self. The resistance you're feeling right now is the most reliable evidence that this practice is exactly what would change your life if you actually did it. Notice the resistance, name it, write about it tonight when you sit down to do the practice for the first time. Begin with the resistance itself. Write, I do not believe this will work. Write, this seems too simple to matter. Write, I am suspicious that this is just another thing that will not change anything. Let the unconscious meet you in the resistance. That is where the practice begins. And see what arrives once the resistance has been allowed to speak. If you have stayed with this video to this point, every minute of it, I want you to understand something. You are different from most people. Most people would have left by now. Most people would have decided that something this simple cannot be the answer they have been searching for. Most people would have returned to the search for something more impressive, more complicated, more aligned with their existing assumptions about what transformation requires. But you are still here, which means something in you knows that what I'm saying is true. Something in you has been waiting for this. Something in you has known for a long time that the answer was simpler than you have been pretending. Trust that knowing. Tonight, before you sleep, sit in silence for 10 minutes with a pen and a notebook. Write whatever arises. Do not try to make it impressive. Do not try to make it productive. Do not try to make it meaningful. Just write. And do it again tomorrow night, and the night after, and the night after. Carl Jung wrote thousands of pages of exactly this kind of writing in his own private notebooks across decades of his life. The book that emerged from those notebooks, the Red Book, is now considered one of the most important psychological documents ever produced. He did not write those pages to publish them. He wrote them because he was doing exactly the practice I'm asking you to do. He was sitting in silence and letting his unconscious surface. And in the process, he discovered everything that became the foundation of depth psychology. Everything we now know about archetypes, about the shadow, about individuation, about the self, about the deep structure of the human soul, it all came from the practice. The simple practice of sitting in silence and writing what arises. This is what is available to you. This is what has always been available to you. And this is what almost no one ever actually does, because the conscious mind cannot believe that something this simple could be the doorway to everything they have been searching for. But it is. It always has been, and it always will be. Type 777 in the comments if you commit to doing this practice tonight. Not as performance, as a vow, as a quiet declaration to yourself and to the field that you are choosing, finally, to stop searching and begin doing. Subscribe if your soul is hungry for this kind of depth. Share this with one person you know who has been searching for years for something that actually works. Give them this. Give them the simplest and most powerful practice that exists. And remember, the thing that changes your life is not what you've been told it is. It is not the new course. It is not the perfect morning routine. It is not the manifestation technique or the productivity system or the lifestyle redesign. It is the simple act of sitting alone in silence and giving your unconscious permission to speak. 10 minutes a night, with a pen in your hand, without an agenda, without an audience, without trying to make it more than what it is. Do this tonight, and then again tomorrow, and then again the night after, and watch what happens to your life over the coming weeks. Carl Jung, who spent his entire life mapping the territory of the human soul, who descended into his own depths to exactly this practice, who emerged with insights that changed the entire history of psychology, said something that I want you to carry with you long after this video ends. Do not wait for the right materials. The right materials are whatever notebook and pen are within reach right now. Do not wait for the right knowledge. You already have everything you need. The practice is the knowledge. The doing is the learning. Sit, write, listen, and let your life begin to change from the only place it can ever truly change, from the inside, from the depths, from the unconscious that has been waiting patiently and faithfully for the moment you finally turn toward it with the simple offering of 10 minutes and an open page. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And tonight, with one notebook and one pen and 10 minutes of silence, you begin.